For those of you that don't know me, my name is Aidan Shalafu. I'm the recruitment coordinator for the Bader International Study Center, otherwise known as the BISC or the Castle, especially by our students. But do note that I'll be using all three names interchangeably. By now, I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with them. Now, before I go too further, what I'll maybe do is I'll throw it over to my colleagues here and let them introduce themselves. So, Megan, whenever you're ready, you could take it.
Absolutely. So hello, everybody. My name is Megan. I'm a current Queen's student here. I actually graduated last year with a major in music and a minor in French. And I was in the Concurrent Education program, which means I am now in Teachers College here at Queen's as well. And I went to the Castle in my third year, so for the winter term of 2020 for my upper year exchange program. So I'm here to just talk about the student perspective. And if you have any questions particular to that, that's what I'm here for. I'll pass it over to Jacob.
Yes, happy weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jacob Turcott, the Senior Admission Coordinator for the Bader International Study Center, excuse me. So I kind of assist Aidan with first year, but I also look after our upper year study abroad opportunities, which Megan just alluded to and what she attended the BISC for. So that's my specialty, but I was handling the first year portfolio, but I'll be posting helpful links in the chat and answering your questions in the Q&A. But as you probably can figure out, we'll have some Q&A sessions throughout today's presentation as well. I guess back to you, Aidan, or not sure if Liz, you'd like to just hop on and introduce yourself.
Yeah, can do. Hi, I'm Liz Hubbell. I'm the instructor and the Concurrent Education Coordinator at the Castle. So I teach the Prof 110 course that Con Ed students take here throughout the year. And I also coordinated things like practicum placements, which we'll talk about later on, I think.
Yes, thank you. We're actually going to jump into that pretty quickly. So the way today is going to work is we're going to be talking about arts and concurrent education. We'll also be joined by Professor Peter Lowe, who teaches English. He'll be here to talk a bit about the arts. But we're going to start off with just a quick overview of concurrent education at the Castle. And then we're actually going to open up to a Q&A. So for those of you that are interested in concurrent education, now is your chance to ask Liz any questions that you may have. But before that, yeah, we'll start with a quick overview. Then we'll move on to, after concurrent education, the arts. We'll talk a bit about the campus, some ELOs, and we'll have a Q&A with Professor Peter Lowe, followed by one more Q&A at the end for just any sort of general questions you might have for us. Megan will probably also be jumping in here and there to share her experiences as both an arts and a concurrent education student. And maybe Megan, I'll let you talk more about it later, but you can tell us what you're doing nowadays as well too. All right, so just to do a quick recap is, concurrent education at the Castle. Well, for those of you that you've probably heard this before, but really the BISC environment is designed to maximize your learning at first year university. We do this a few different ways. We have a small cohort of 130 first year students, average class sizes of 14 to 17 students, and you're going to find that your professors really get to know you well, and they're really going to be able to tailor their instruction to meet your learning needs. And ultimately, this is that personalized experience that's going to ensure your success in later years. So before we get too far, I do want to quickly talk about teaching divisions. So when you're in concurrent education, you're going to pick one of two divisions. So there's a primary junior, which is grades K to 6, and intermediate senior, which is grades 7 to 12. This is actually a picture of one of our practicums. So Liz, I'm sure you could talk a little bit more about that later. Now, if you're on the call and you've heard of the junior intermediate grades 4 to 8, this is not something that we offer at Queen's. So it is just those two divisions, K to 6 and 7 to 12. Now, if you're in the intermediate senior, which is 7 to 12, you will need to select two teachables. So this would be your major and your minor, and this is essentially what you'd be qualified to teach in. And if you recall in your high school, well, your Ontario high school, that is, you may have had a teacher, say, who taught geography and who taught, history, right? And that would be their two teachables. So these are the teachables that we offer at Queen's. And what I'll do is, if you want, take a quick screenshot of that if you haven't seen that already. If not, you could find that on the Concurrent Education website. Now, there's a couple of things about concurrent education at Queen's that really stands out. First off is the career services, and that might sound like a really odd thing to say. Megan's nodded her head. She's had good experiences, I could tell. But we have career services specifically for concurrent education students. And from my understanding, we have the biggest career services in Canada for education students. This is important, the career services, because if you're in concurrent education, that means you are going on to become a teacher. So you need the skills to find work, know how to interview, know how to apply to different boards, because it is different than other jobs. And you'll find, especially as you enter that final year, you're going to be working very closely with career services to get those skills that you need. They're going to help connect you with jobs. And, if you have any questions about the process, they'll be able to walk you through it. And that's really important to us, that we're not just, providing you with a B.Ed and then saying, go get it. We want you to have the support to go out there and find work. And most of our, this is actually across the board, but over 90% of Queen's students find work in their field within 6 months of graduating. So that's pretty incredible. Now, one other thing that you should know just about Queen's in general is that our concurrent education program is 5 years as opposed to 6. So not only will you be having this, this support network just by taking concurrent education, but you'll also be doing it in a shorter time frame where it's typically 6 years everywhere else. Now, there are a few BISC specific benefits, and I'll just quickly touch about them, and I'll maybe let Liz talk a little bit more about them later. But the first is you are getting international teaching experience. This is something that you could put on your resume when you're applying for jobs. As a whole, 80% of employers, not just in concurrent education, but across Canada, value candidates that have international experience. And there's many reasons for that. So we could certainly touch on that a bit later. You're also going to be working with a different curriculum. So, let's say you're from Ontario, you're doing concurrent education, and you're going to be very familiar with the Ontario curriculum. When you go to apply for jobs, you may be interested in working out in Alberta, where it's very common that folks who've done their B.Ed in Ontario like to go. Well, not only can you say, well, I have the Ontario curriculum, but I've had experience teaching in the British curriculum, because while you're doing your practicum here at the Castle, you won't be working with the Ontario curriculum because, well, simply put, there's no Ontario schools in the UK. So there's also some differences, I should say, too, with the practicum. So with that, actually, I want to go over to the practicum. I really like this picture just because the sheep's there. But typically, if you're doing your practicum in Canada, you'll actually be you'll be doing your practicum for the primary grades, the younger grades, and that's required regardless if you're going to teach intermediate, senior, or you're just focused on the primary grades. At the Castle, it's different. You could actually be doing practicums with a wide variety of age groups. You could be working with students with special needs. You could be working with, I'm trying to think of other examples, and perhaps Liz, I'll pass it to you in a moment to share more about that. But you're not just working necessarily with the primary junior age. You'll have the opportunity to experience a ton of different other schooling systems or schooling styles. Now, I already see there's some Q&As coming in. I see the chats getting nice and busy, although that might be Jacob. And if you haven't noticed yet, Jacob will be posting some useful links in the chat throughout this presentation. But I now want to open things up to you. And if you have any questions about concurrent education, about the experience, now's your time to ask. Liz will be here to answer some of them. And Liz, did you have any questions? Or any, pardon me, not questions, any other information you wish to add?
I can just give some more detail about some of the key points that you highlighted there. So I think, yeah, the international experience component that we're able to offer students here is a big thing. I think, thinking back to my own teacher training, one of the big things that we were always told that schools are going to be looking for in future candidates for the classroom is flexibility. And being able to say that you've worked in schools in a different country, a slightly different culture, working with a different curriculum, things that really move you slightly beyond your comfort zone and something that's different from what you yourself have experienced as a student in your primary and secondary education. It just shows you have that flexibility that becomes so valuable when you're a teacher. And as was just mentioned, you will be working in schools that use a British curriculum. That being said, we also do make sure that throughout the year, we are doing a comparison, looking at Ontario curriculum documents, government policy documents, that sort of thing, and doing a compare and contrast to what we have that's similar here in the UK, so that when you return to Ontario, it doesn't all feel like you've had a gap in that. We try and keep that rolling for you whilst also looking at what we have happening in our local area in schools. And then also, practicum was mentioned as being something that really is a little different here at BISC. I think one of the huge benefits that we can offer that just logistically doesn't work on main campus is because of our small cohort, our small class size in Con Ed, we're able to integrate your practicum so that it happens each week throughout the term. And this is a contrast to on main campus where you would do your practicum as one block once your term is finished, basically. So this means that each week you're going out to your local school that you're placed in, and we arrange those placements for you. You don't have to be seeking out British schools. And then each week, when you then come into class, into the prof class, we're then discussing things that you should be looking for the next week when you go into schools, or talking about things that you saw in your most recent visit, and what are the implications of that, or things you didn't understand, or things that seem surprising or strange or fantastic. And it gives us that opportunity to really link theory and practice in a way that's a little more challenging to do if you have to have your practicum all standing alone by itself. So we really think that's a major benefit that we can offer students here. And we do have, as was just mentioned, a range of practicum placements here. So we're lucky that we have both independent schools and state schools as partners. So Battle Abbey School, which I think was in one of the earlier slides, wasn't it?
It was. I'll go back to it.
Yes, go back. Battle Abbey is one of our independent school partners. It's a secondary school. There it is. Oh, not that. There we go. And it's only about 20 minutes away. And it's on or near the site of the Battle of Hastings. So it's an ancient site, an ancient building, now run as an independent secondary school. And we also have had students placed this year at their partner prep school, which is the primary equivalent, which is in a different building. So that's quite a different flavor, perhaps, than our state school placements. So that's one opportunity that some students have had this year. We have a number of state school partners, lots of small primary schools in the local area. We have had a state secondary partner in the local area. And then this year we've got two quite unusual practicum placements that we've been being able to offer to some students and that we know will continue next year. One of those is an outdoor education program. So this is a forest school, but it actually doesn't happen in a forest, it happens on a marsh. So it's near Eastbourne, so it's quite close to the coast. And each week some students have been taking groups of children along with their teacher out into the marsh, doing all kinds of outdoor education activities. They've had fires every week and snacks, and it sounds fabulous. We also have had the picture you saw with the sheep. The sheep were not the students in question, but there's the students in question. This was a program that was happening with one of our local special schools. So it was for older students with special educational needs. And rather than our students going to their site, their students came to us. So this placement was held here in the Castle Gardens and Grounds. It was providing those students with workplace skills, but also gave our students the opportunity to really build a close relationship with a very small group of students with very particular needs, start to have an understanding of special educational needs, look at some outdoor education related work, and also start to think about teaching that looks a little different from mainstream classrooms. So lots of our students have really enjoyed that this year, and especially because of course it involved feeding the sheep and checking out the chickens every week, which was a highlight. So yeah, I think those are sort of the three key areas that Aidan highlighted. As well, career services was mentioned for Con Ed. And whilst we don't have a specific career services Con Ed program here at the Castle because of our size, we do make sure that even in your first year here, we start linking you up with people who can answer your questions about what sorts of things you should be doing over the course of your program, just to help you be more prepared for when it gets to the end of your program. What do you want to have on your CV? So we get in both British and Ontario contacts who join us both in person and online, and can answer your questions about what should you be doing to be proactive, even as a first year student, to start making yourself the best possible candidate for that dream job 5 years from now. I think there was a question just popped up about class size.
We have a few questions actually in the chat.
Yeah, maybe I can do those while we're
Sure, if you'd like, I could read them all out to you.
That might help. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I got to say too, I quite like the idea that you get to feed sheep in the classroom. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, I got our first question here, and just before I read it, I noticed there's some questions coming in for Megan, so feel free to send them direct. If you have questions about her experience, we'll give her a chance to talk to later on in the presentation. Okay, here we are. The first one. What benefits do you think come with concurrent education that you would not get by doing consecutive education as a teacher's college after your BA or your BSc?
Well, that's something that maybe Megan and I can answer as a pair, because I actually didn't do concurrent education. I did consecutive education. But seeing now what our concurrent education students get here at the Castle, I kind of wish I'd had this. I think it really does mean that our students are making links sooner between the educational pedagogy that they're learning and the other courses that they're taking, even the ones that aren't necessarily teachable subjects. If you're doing primary junior, your subjects across the board, it just encourages you to start thinking about that learning in a way, okay, how is this going to impact me as a teacher? How am I going to use the knowledge that I'm gaining in these classes as a teacher in the future? And I think things like the psychology course is a really good example. Here at the Castle, if you take psychology, and we encourage people in Con Ed to take psychology in their first year here at the Castle, it's a small cohort. Anna brings her dogs for you to do fun stuff with. But I think it means that there are often lots of links where students will say in our prof course, oh yes, we've talked about that a little bit in psychology. And then we can look at those concepts that have already been covered in one of your classes, but from a much more education focused standpoint. So I think that's a huge benefit. Maybe Megan can also share some other things of her own experience in Con Ed.
Yeah, of course. The one thing that I've noticed now that I'm in Teachers College is that being part of Con Ed means I actually had 2 extra practicum experiences that they don't get when they're in consecutive education. So when you're in concurrent education, you get to do 3 practicum experiences during your undergrad. So first, second, and third year. In my case, I took the 3rd year and 4th year so I could go to the Castle. And so when you do consecutive education, at Queen's at least, I can't talk about consecutive education anywhere else. But at Queen's, I know that they just do that one, like my 3rd year practicum is the one that the consecutive students get. So they miss out on the first 2 practicums that we get. And so the first 2 practicums, even though they don't technically count towards our final Teachers College application, they are still experience that sets you up to be more comfortable and prepared once you finally get to those practicum experiences that do count towards that application for your teaching certificate. So that I think is a big one. A lot of teachers that I've had, associate teachers that I've had when I'm in the classroom have said they can tell a difference between concurrent education students often because they've had those experiences and they're more comfortable interacting with kids or whatever age group you're working with in the classroom. So for me, that's a really big one, just, getting my feet under myself in those first couple of years and then feeling much more confident in the later years. So that's just what I would say.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. Oh, sorry, Liz, did you want to have some more to add or?
Not necessarily, but I completely agree with Megan that I did not have those classroom experiences in my first year because I wasn't doing an education degree in my first year. And our students really find that, you know, in September, it can sometimes be a little nerve-wracking when you go into a classroom for the first time, but the expectations for a first year practicum are that you go in, you find your feet, you take initiative as and when you're ready to. You don't teach lessons straight away. You might be invited to share something that's your own area of expertise or interest, but it does just give you that opportunity to find your feet a bit and to find your own level of confidence in the classroom, which can take a little while. So I think if you've already done that in your first year, that sets you up so well for the years that come.
So there's a question in the chat I just want to answer quickly myself, and then I'll read another one out for the both of you. But concurrent education, just to describe this a little bit more, this is where you get your BA or your BSc and your BEd at the same time. So if you're doing concurrent education at the Con Ed program and you want to go do a master's afterwards, that is possible. You will also have a bachelor's degree. So I think there's a few folks here who maybe haven't applied or thinking of applying next year, but you would actually apply directly to the Con Ed program, and you'd pick either the Concurrent Education Arts or Concurrent Education Sciences at the Castle. Okay, another question for the both of you. So is there integration between the BISC Con Ed program and the Queen's Kingston Con Ed program? Will BISC students need to catch up in any way after returning to the Kingston program? And they add, thank you.
Great question. And we have really tried to work hard with colleagues on main campus in setting up the BISC program to make sure that you don't have any catching up to do. So lots of the overarching themes that we cover in the Prof 110 course here at the BISC are also covered in a similar sort of way, probably not exactly the same because it's a different instructor, but are similar topics to what are covered on main campus. So you should end up going into your second year with a really similar sort of base grounding in pedagogy that you would have had you been on main campus. Hopefully, we like to think, that we've also offered you a little bit of a head start on some things as well, simply because we have that small class size. I really get to know the students in first year Con Ed really well because it's a small group, whereas on main campus, it's quite a large group. So I think that also means that we've had more conversations one-to-one between students and myself, which also I think helps. In terms of practicum and all that sort of thing, you're all set up for exactly what you would have had you been on main campus as well. So there's no difference there. So yeah, really our students then straight into the second year program and have everything that they need to have.
Perfect, thank you. I have another one here, and I think this is a really good one. So actually, would you be able to give sort of an overview of how the program is set up? So in the sense of when you do your practicums, when, and not just over the course of the first year, but and Megan, I think this is where you could answer some of this too, but how you finish off that fifth year as well.
Do you want me to start with what first year looks like if you're here at the Castle, and then Megan, you can take over from there? So the structure of your first year here at the Castle, if you're in Con Ed, is that you are carrying your regular load of arts or science classes towards your BA or your BSc, and then you carry your education components as an add-on extra. So the prof course is over the full year, but it carries half the weight of your other courses. So you'll only have class once a week for that class. So it adds a bit of workload, but we try and make sure that it is manageable. You are very busy people. Then your practicum, as I said, happens each week, which is a little different here. But what will happen is, if you're in Con Ed, your schedule will block out so that you don't have classes in your timetable on a Wednesday morning. Instead, at 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll get on BISC transport and minibus will take you to the school that you've been assigned to. You'll stay there until about 11 o'clock, and then you'll be back in time if you have an 11:30 class. And so that means that throughout the term, you get the hours that you require for first year practicum. So our students are busy people, but lots of them say that they really find that that Wednesday morning sort of break-in routine where it's something a little different from your being in classes and doing your readings and your schoolwork is a really nice change in your week. And they find that really energizes them for the rest of their week. I think people really enjoy their practicum placements on a Wednesday morning. And then second year and beyond, Megan.
Yeah, I'm so jealous I didn't do Con Ed at the Castle because it sounds like so much fun doing the practicum like that. So yeah, once you get into second and third year, it's pretty much the same setup as it was in first year, except I guess you won't be in England. So you'll be doing your practicum experience. Most people do it at the end, like Liz said, at the end of your semester. However, there is a little bit of flexibility. So I did have a friend who did hers once a week around Christmas time because she had less classes. And so she could fit it in there. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but most people do that practicum experience at the end. And then again, it's the same course setup. So you still have that one Con Ed course a year. It's still only worth half. So you only go once a week. Very not overwhelming, actually probably the most fun course you'll be taking. And that would be the same for both second and third year. And then once you get into your fifth year of Teachers College, things get a little bit more intense because you're doing just the teaching stuff. So we're separated into blocks. So what happens is if you're a concurrent education student, you start in September and you do about a month of in-class work, taking all of your teaching courses, depending on if you're IS or PJ. And then you do a 7-week practicum. So that is inside a class, and this is 7 weeks. And you know, of course you have time to get used to your classroom and stuff. But then by the end of that 7 weeks, you know, you're pretty much just teaching the class, which is amazing. I loved my 7-week practicum. And then you have a little bit more class, here, you know, sprinkled in, and then you do another practicum. So overall, over your year and a half, we say it's a year and a half of Teachers College afterwards because it goes September to September, basically. It is a full normal semester plus a summer semester tacked on the end. So you kind of get it over with really quick, which is kind of nice. You know, they say you get out in the job market early. I'm hoping that hangs true for me, and that in September that I'll be working. But in the end, you have about 4 practicum experiences in your fourth year, and they're all about different lengths. In your fifth year, you have a 7-week and then a couple of 4 weeks and then a 5-week, I think, depending on how it works your year. So that's kind of what fifth year looks like at a glance. I can obviously go in more detail, but focusing on first year is definitely the first step. You don't need to worry about fifth year until you get there. All you just need to know is that it's a year and a summer semester. I think that's the most important part.
Thank you both for answering. And with that, actually, we're going to move over to talking about the arts. We're actually joined now by Professor Peter Lowe. I think we might have just lost him, actually. Okay. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's a really great question in the Q&A, which we often get a lot. And I know for Con Ed students, as Liz mentioned, it's slightly different in terms of your schedule, but I'm thinking maybe Megan, you can talk about this in terms of what your schedule is like, but someone's just kind of wondering, like, how long is the school day? Is each day a set time from 9 to 4? So when you get to university, your day is really based on what courses you take and what time they're at. So you can kind of build your own schedule in a sense based on what time those courses are offered. So there's structure, but less structure than high school in terms of set times, but it is slightly different for Con Ed students with the additional 2 courses. But yeah, maybe Liz, if you want to kind of quickly talk about what the Con Ed schedule looks like, and then Megan, maybe what your upper year winter term schedule looked like as well, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, like Jacob said, it's very dependent on what other classes you're taking here at the Castle. And because often, since we have small classes and small numbers, the class that you're taking, it may only be offered at a specific time slot in the week. So you don't really have a choice there. You're told this is when that class is happening. However, one of the things that's really different about the structure of your courses and your week at the Castle is that classes here only run Monday through Thursday, bearing in mind that you won't really have Wednesday morning classes if you're in Con Ed because you'll be out at your schools. And that's because on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's when we run our experiential learning program. And so that's when you're going off-site and you're doing sort of field trip type activities, things that link to your different courses, and then experiences that you'll bring back into the classroom and discuss and analyze in different ways. So that's quite a different thing about the structure of your week at the BISC, but also is something that gives you a lot of difference in your week. So one week you might not have an ELO, an experiential learning trip, on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so your weekend is your own. Other weekends you might have a few different trips that are taking you all over the place, and the BISC covers, you know, your fees that you've paid covered all your transportation, all your entry into galleries and museums and historic sites and wherever it is that your courses take you. So that does make your week look a lot different. It does mean that sometimes students do have busier, longer days, Monday through Thursday. You could find yourself getting on your bus for practicum at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. And then you could find that maybe you're stuck in an evening class with me on a Wednesday evening, because we do have some classes that do run after dinner. But profs are really aware that that's the structure of your week, and they do try and set up people's schedules so that they have as much balance as possible. And you will have other big breaks in your time as well, where you don't have class, and that gives you time to go out into the grounds and find a space in the sunshine to sit and read, because we do get nice warm sunshine here a lot sooner than you have it in Kingston.
Yeah, that's all great points. That's the one thing. I'm a tour guide on main campus, and that's the one thing I bring up a lot, is that your schedule in university is very different than what you're used to in high school, in that, you know, you do have breaks. You might have 2 classes back to back, so at 3 hours of class, and then you have a 2-hour break, and then you go back into class. So it's very different. It does take some getting used to. You will get used to it, I promise. At the castle, one thing I noticed that's different from main campus is that the castle actually has a designated lunch period and a designated dinner period. So you will not have dinner, or you will not have classes during those little like hour breaks, or I forget exactly how long it is, but that's one thing that it doesn't happen on main campus. Your class can kind of be anytime during the day. You don't have the designated lunch and dinner, but at the castle you do. So that's kind of an important distinction. And then just as an example of what your schedule could look like, for me, my schedule was kind of weird. I actually also had Mondays off. I had no classes on Mondays or Fridays. So I had like a 3-day week, which meant my Wednesdays were super long. I started at 8:30 in the morning and went super late into the night. I had class all day, but it was kind of nice. And, you know, I had a 4-day weekend. And then on my Tuesdays and my Thursdays, it was a little bit different. So I had an 8:30 in the morning, but then I didn't have a class after that. And then I had 2 classes after that. So it kind of ebbs and flows of how much work. So during those breaks, I would go out into the garden often and go for walks. Aiden knows I would go for walks all the time at the castle. So that was one thing I would do in between my classes if I had an hour break or so. Or we have a library right on campus as well. Then you could head to the library and get some work done, get your readings done for the class you just had or something like that, so that you're not super behind. That's the one thing castle kids I think are really good at, is using their time wisely, because they want to use all their extra time to explore. So you get really good at, you know, knowing how to use those hours in between your classes to really maximize your time, so that you have maximum travel and exploration time as well. So.
And I think what Megan says about the way that the campus here is set up does make a difference to your week as well, because thinking back to my own university experience, if I'd had an hour's break, it wasn't really time between classes for me to get anywhere or pop back home, but if you're here at the BISC, it's a relatively small site if you don't count where all the sheep are. So you do have lots of opportunities, that there's lots of spaces around the castle that are set up for students to work, and you go into various rooms around the castle and you find students holed up and doing quiet work in individual spaces that they've found, or your residence is just up the hill. So lots of students do have the opportunity during the day to go back and forth, which on a big campus at any other university would be challenging in a shorter break. So that makes your days look a little different as well, I think, just the nature of our site here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I have one other question here, and I think I'm going to just answer this one very quickly. But how many courses can be taken for BSc, BA outside allocated, those allocated for BEd? The answer would be 4 full-year courses or 8 half-year courses or semester courses.
Yeah, so just to follow up on Aiden, so you would take 5 arts and science courses, and then your your B.Ed courses are in addition to that. But as Liz mentioned, they're half unit courses, so they are, as she mentioned, a lighter workload with that. But that's the same for students on Kingston campus as well who are in the Con Ed programs.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. So yes, sorry, regular courses, and then in with the education courses as well too. But with that, though, I think we best move on to the arts. Just in the interest of time, we do want to try and keep this presentation under an hour. So Liz, thank you so much for joining us today and providing your expertise on the concurrent education program and, of course, the castle.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see lots of people that are on today showing up at our doors very soon.
All right. Have a good one. With that, we'll move on over to the arts. And I do want to, it looks like we have a connection issue with our other professor that was supposed to be joining us today. So we'll go through the arts, and we'll maybe have a longer Q&A portion at the end, but it will just be myself, Megan, and Jacob there. What is your art? What arts are you interested in? And as this slide shows, there are quite a few arts. Now, that said, they're not all listed here. And if I recall earlier this week too, Jacob actually made a joke that I probably wouldn't be able to fit all the arts on one slide, and that's true. If you're looking here and you're thinking, oh, but I applied for the philosophy, political studies, and economics specialization, I did not list any of the specializations. But I can tell you that in arts and science alone, there are over 2,600 different degree options. So you have quite a bit of choice when it comes to that. Now, that might sound confusing or even a bit complicated. I promise you it's not. The way it works with the arts, and it's similar for the science too, they're the same faculty at the castle, is you'll actually pick your major or your specialization or your medial if you're looking at doing sort of diving into 2 subjects equally at the end of your first year and going into second year. This is really a huge benefit. And maybe, Megan, I'll let you share your experience with this as an art student in just a moment. But what it lets you do, it lets you really get a sample, I guess you could say, of the different arts. So you have things such as political studies, and maybe you're between doing political studies and French studies. Well, you could try both courses, in your first year. Then come the end of that first year, you'll go, well, you know what? Yeah, actually, I did want to go for political studies. And then you could select that as your major. So that is a huge benefit. Megan, did you want to share your experience with first year in the arts?
Of course. So, a lot of people sometimes might be a little bit nervous about having a general first year program. And that's never something I understood, because as somebody who did do a general first year of an arts program, it's really great to be able to experience those different things. So for me, I knew what 3 subjects I wanted to focus on. I didn't know what combination of them. So I did music, French, as I already mentioned, but I also looked at math, and I took all of those courses in undergrad, and then in my first year, sorry. And then I decided, music and French were the 2 I wanted to major and minor in, but then I still actually ended up taking math so that I'll be able to teach math eventually. But, having that first year really allowed me to experience what those subjects were like in university, which is sometimes very different than when you take them in high school. And so that really helped me, solidify those decisions. Whereas I know another BISC ambassador, she thought she was going in for one specific subject, and then all of a sudden she experienced some health classes for the first time and then changed her mind completely by the end of that first year, and now she loves her program. And so having that opportunity in first year to kind of, have a little taste of everything and really get your feet wet in the different subjects is really, really helpful as a student to really understand what you like. So I found it very beneficial personally.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I also want to just bring attention that Professor Christian Lloyd has actually joined us now to answer some questions about the arts at the castle. And maybe before I do, Christian, was there anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, Hi everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I've actually just come from the end of term student showcase. So that's an undergraduate conference that all of our students get a chance to take part in if they wish. And we were just doing, I saw a session on decolonization. We also had sessions from maths this morning, so that they were looking at modeling various aspects of the estate. We have a talk from one of our history profs tonight about liberalism and imperialism in 19th century Chinese history. So yeah, there's loads going on here, and these are kind of opportunities that you don't normally get until much later in your undergraduate career, the chance to try your ideas in public in front of a friendly audience. And that's the kind of thing, I don't think I actually did that before I was doing my master's. So that's a sort of marker of how if you start your degree at the BISC or indeed do up a year here, it really accelerates your skill set, it gets you ahead of the game.
Perfect, thank you. With that said, we'll now open it up to Q&A. So once again, if you have any questions about the arts, if you have questions for Christian, or if you want to also hear a little bit about Megan's journey through the arts too, you could also direct questions to her. So once again, I invite you to use the chat or the Q&A function to direct your questions there. But perhaps one that I'll just start off with is speaking of the arts and in particular, I guess, history. We're doing a really interesting, some interesting research, I should say, this year at the Castle. Christian, would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So we have just appointed a new research coordinator, Dr. Claire Kennan. So she began in September, so she's been working with us for a little under 2 terms. And she's responsible, for example, for running the undergraduate showcases at the end of term. So I was just talking to Claire earlier today and watching her students. But her main project that was on offer to students this year was research into the 1920s era at the Castle, when that was when the Castle was being rebuilt, because it was sort of stripped out in the 18th century, and then 2 private owners rebuilt it. So the 1920s, it was owned by a guy called Claude Lowther. He owned it from, I think it was 1911 to 1929, and deeply eccentric man, an MP, a dandy, a social climber, and so on. So he had big parties at the Castle once he started rebuilding it as his private home and so on. So he had people like Winston Churchill and other government ministers around, various kinds of socialites there. And we have some material on him in our own archive, and that's what students have been researching. So we've found out what we can about Lowther's period in our own archive. So first year is doing primary research under Claire's guidance. And then we also went to the National Archive. So everyone who wanted to got a chance to go to the National Archive in London, where we saw the 1921 census records. I think we're actually the first academic group to see those, because they're released 100 years after the census takes place. Obviously, January 22 was the first time we could look at them. And from that, we could see who was living in the Castle on the day of the census. So what we're doing is a WordPress site with all of the students' research. We also did a recording of a marching song. Lowther was also a soldier, and he recruited local men, so some of the people who lived on the estate, the surrounding towns and villages, to some regiments that he formed for World War I, and they had a special kind of patriotic marching song. So Claire and I, with the research group of students, we made the first ever recording of that, and it'll all be going on this WordPress site. And we will have a link to that from the BISC external site, so you'll be able to get a taste of the kinds of things you could be involved in. That's a 2-year project at least, so if you come to do your first year next year, you can definitely get involved in that, and it's really great. It's fun and it's interesting. You're finding out something about where you're studying. You get to meet people and work with people that perhaps aren't in your classes, maybe in other streams and so on. And you get to make something that's lasting. We have found stuff out that will now be available to the general public. So all kinds of interesting opportunities there. And that's something that develops your skill set, it develops your confidence. It's good academically as well. Again, very, very unusual opportunity for someone who is starting their first year at university.
Yeah, thank you for sharing it. I mean, that's really important that there are research opportunities, available for first-year students. So keep that in mind, folks. If you are interested in doing that, be sure to connect with your professors. And I actually have a question here, Christian. I think you'd be the perfect person to answer this, but what are the most popular arts courses at the Castle?
So this fluctuates over time. Different disciplines become more or less popular. Art history is one that's on the rise at the moment. Remember BISC 100 101, so those courses which give you credits towards entry to, I think it's 6 disciplines at the moment. Those are very, very popular. They always have a very good enrollment. Politics is quite popular. And psychology, I think actually psychology, besides the BISC 100 101, is the largest discipline at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to make a note too, I've pulled up a slide here with some course highlights. The reason these particular courses are highlighted is these are prerequisite courses for, I should say prerequisite courses for choosing your major, or popular majors, I should say, in your second year, you're at the end of your first year of university. So if you are, someone who's interested in English, then be sure that you're taking English 101 or 100, pardon me. I've got 2 questions. They're very similar, actually, so I'll maybe just combine them together. But what are some ELOs that students have to look forward to in the arts? And we'll talk a bit more about those in a bit as well, too. But Christian, was there any that you wanted to share?
Yes, certainly. So for say both of the music classes, visits to live performances. So if you're taking popular music, you will see a band in any genre of popular music. Could be pure pop, could be reggae, could be techno, could be anything. And so all things being equal with COVID and so on, we fully expect that to happen. And the same with the opera class. Where they had been to the Royal Albert Hall to see, it was Madame Butterfly, actually, yes. So you go to some fantastic venues, see world-class musicians there. For the art history classes, visits to some of the greatest galleries in the world in London. And with those, it's not just about seeing some of the works that you've been studying, directly in front of your face. I mean, that's very important, but also learning about the institutions as well, and the politics of galleries, where the money comes from, who set it up, how were things acquired, who is represented there, who is not represented there. So all of our courses, we always encourage that kind of investigation, so that we are not going as tourists. We're going as scholars who ask difficult questions, who want to contextualize and examine how works are acquired, how meanings are created in galleries via labels, displays, and so on and so forth. So we teach you to think very, very critically. And then someone actually asked about mathematics as well, which is quite timely. So we've had some really good maths experiential learning this year. Dr. Matt Haynes, he had students this morning. Students were looking at mathematical solutions to problems on the estate. So using particular formulae to work out how different animal populations are sustained on the estate, and how gardeners can model plant growth so that they spend the optimal amount of time maintaining particular plants and things like that. So actually quite practical. And then there was, I think for physics, there was a demonstration by Dr. Shelley Katz, our musician, one of our musicians in residence. And Shelley had the students analyzing sound waves in physics, because Shelley's an inventor, and he's invented a new kind of loudspeaker. So they're working with those. So even those kind of areas where, you know, that there's no great maths museum in London or anything like that you could go to, there are some very ingenious activities so that you can approach the subject matter of your class from a different way, and those can be really memorable. It can be the thing that really sticks it in your head or helps you to understand and then remember a really difficult concept. So yeah, all kinds of interesting stuff. I know in English 100 last year they went to Charleston Farmhouse, so that's a local trust which looks after the house of Vanessa Bell, who was Virginia Woolf's sister, and that's where the Bloomsbury group met. So Maynard Keynes, who was the greatest economist of the time, Roger Fry, the greatest art historian, T.S. Eliot, the greatest poet, Virginia Woolf, arguably the greatest novelist, all of those people met there, and you can kind of get a behind the scenes of how that subculture works. So there's a lot really just within reach of the castle here. And then there's London, and then there's the midterm trips beyond as well. So you have lots and lots of opportunities to learn experientially.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I'm taking a look at the chat here. I'm not seeing too many other questions coming in. So I think what we'll perhaps do is we'll finish off. I have a few other ELOs to share with you in this presentation, which we'll get to, and then we'll open it up to a general Q&A. But Christian, thank you so much for joining us and for chatting about the arts.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I do want to just quickly touch on the estate. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but you will, you know, if you were attending the science presentation last weekend, we did talk about how we treat the estate as a living laboratory. We're talking about sustainability and rewilding, but there are quite a few connections to the arts programs too. So if you're in English, you can expect to spend some time in the Shakespearean Garden. Certainly for anyone in geography, there is so many different, I guess you would call them environmental features, wetlands, woodland, grassland on site. And we really do use our estate to its fullest potential to, you know, connect the classroom learning with everything that we have around us. So expect to be spending a fair bit of time out there too. And yes, this deer is a picture from the castle there. I think this might just be in front of the moat. One course I do want to quickly talk about too before we jump into the ELOs is BISC 100 101. This is a multidisciplinary course, although you will find that many of the arts majors do require that you have taken this course actually to major in that program come second year. What this course does is it's really designed to improve your research, your academic skills, and your critical thinking. And also show you, you know, prepare you, I should say, for the you know, upper year university courses. It really is amazing. It touches on so many different things. So if you're considering, or what I should say, when you're looking at your arts courses, this is definitely one that you should strongly consider. So this is sort of just a quick recap. For folks who've already seen some of these presentations, you've probably seen how we've talked about this before, but really the castle does, summed up as best I can, I should say, this is really what we offer. We have immersive academics, the small classes, personalized learning. This is going to help you build your confidence. We have the international experience. This will, again, help you develop the intercultural competencies. It's going to teach you to be adaptable in unfamiliar situations. And I really just can't drive home enough how much it's valued by employers. This really can set you apart when you are applying for jobs. And then, of course, there's the experiential learning. And this is really where the theoretical meets the practical. So we take what you're learning in class and you get to use it in a real world, so to speak, setting. And you're going to learn through discovery. So the ELOs, or experiential learning opportunities, that really is a highlight. And I want to share just a few of them with you. So let's say you take the introduction to the archaeology course. You could be headed out to Sisbury Ring. This is a Neolithic flint mine and an Iron Age earth fort. So just an incredible ancient site that you could be studying at. Art history, we take our students to the National Gallery. So there's, rather than starting art history from a textbook, you get to see it up close and in person at what I have to say is a really great art collection, but also a really cool building too. Economics students, you'll actually visit Lloyd's of London. This is a global insurance market. And I have to tell you that this sort of doomsday Bond villain building, it looks very cool from the outside, but also incredible on the inside too. So it's a very important place in the world of global economics. Global development studies students could be headed to the British Museum for the course Canada and the Third World. And of course, there's quite a bit of, I guess you could call them, stolen items from the Third World found in this museum. And so this is a great place to study the development of Western countries and countries that are developing. And kind of a cool one here, Megan, you might appreciate this, but music students might be headed over to Handel and Hendrix in London. So George Handel was a 17th century musician who had a house in London. And hundreds of years later, Jimi Hendrix bought the house right next door, and it's now a museum. Oh, Christian, did you have something to add?
Yes, visiting the Handel and Hendrix in London it just shows you the kind of amazing place London is, where there's so many layers of history and those kind of weird coincidences where, two of the great composers of their day, both of them immigrants, of course, so Handel was German and Hendrix was American, came to this amazing city, and in that new context sort of made all these contacts and sort of revolutionized their particular genre of music. So London is still, such an exciting city, and whatever you're interested in, whether it's intellectually or personally or socially, you will find it there. London is a much bigger city than any of the Canadian cities. It's a much older city, and it just has layer upon layer of culture. So our faculty know London very well. They know all of the little nooks and crannies of the city. So they'll be happy to advise you on interesting places like Hendrix's flat, which are slightly off the beaten path, and you will have chances on ELOs to visit lots of interesting places, but you also get free time. The day in London, we'd normally get there by about 10:30 in the morning, and you've then got till 5 when the buses tend to go back. So if you have one ELO in the morning, you've got all afternoon free in London. And one of the great things about London is that many of the museums and galleries are free to enter. All of the major ones are. So you can see amazing, even if you've only got an hour, you don't think, oh, I don't want to pay to go in just for an hour. It's free actually. So you can just walk in there and spend an hour, and you will find your favorites. I particularly like the National Portrait Gallery and the Victoria and Albert Museum, but you will find your own favorites. London really is, the world city. Of all the cities I've been to, it's incredible. So you will find stuff that is utterly fascinating to you.
Thank you. No, it's really hard to include, everything that we do at our ELOs here. I really do have to say this is really just a snapshot of what's available, and there is so much and so much more. I'm sure stuff that I don't even know about that can be found here. But a couple other places I do want to just quickly share is Westminster Palaces and the Houses of Parliament. This is, of course, where the UK Parliament meets. So if you're a political studies student, an amazing place to see. Now, for the Con Ed students here, I do want to quickly talk about Prof 110. This year, actually, our students went to the Foundling Museum. And this is a really interesting spot, because this is where children who were foundlings, as in they don't know where their parents are, I guess orphans, so to speak, would stay, they would get some education. And it's a really interesting look into how we, provide education to those with different challenges in their life. And there's many, ways to say that we can look at this and sort of look at how the education system is today. And there's plenty of students now who come from difficult situations, and we can look at how, are we doing everything we can? Are we addressing this correctly? And this is a great place to take a look at that too, and also see the development of providing education to underserved groups. I do see there's questions in the chat. And I want to read one out. Megan, I think this is one for you. Oh, it looks like you're already replied. I want to do we're going to do a quick Q&A because we're almost right at time. But Megan, would you be willing to share what are the biggest challenges in adjusting to the castle environment, if any? And please don't say Dementors.
I know that. I mean, that would be a cool one. I think it's slightly hard for me to answer this question just because I did come as an upper year. So my transition's a little bit different as when you're in first year. Although from the other BISC ambassadors that I work with, actually a lot of them say that the transition's actually very nice because the castle is a really nice stepping stone between high school and university. So, you're getting your university experience, that level of academics that's very contrasting to high school, the level of academics that you need to have. But at the same time, the castle, like the cohort is so small, your professors are fantastic. The professors were hands down my favorite part about being at the castle when I was there. And, the small class sizes are really just great supports in helping you with that transition academically. Castle students do very well, especially when they transfer back to main campus because they build those good habits early. I talked earlier about how when you're at the castle, you really get used to using your time wisely while you're there so that you can travel and stuff, and setting up those anti-procrastination skills right from the start just sets you up really great. So I think in terms of academics, it's actually a really fantastic stepping stone. I know when I went, a lot of people were thrown off by the fact that the castle is actually in the middle of the countryside, which personally I love, and actually everybody loves. Who doesn't love being in the gardens surrounded by these fantastic animals? A peacock just casually strolls into the courtyard, and it's a truly magical place to study. And even if you're a city person, as a lot of my friends were at first, it was very jarring for them. I'm a country girl, so I'm used to it. But really, it's not a challenge, I would say. It's just sometimes a culture shock as you are going to a new country, and you find very easily that travel in the UK is very convenient. And so actually a challenge that you might think is a challenge in adjusting to this new environment actually ends up being very straightforward because it all feels very natural, and you have the people to support you, and you've got the transportation to get you to the big cities. And so you kind of have everything you need right where you are. So, even though you might think it's scary, it actually isn't as challenging as you might think. So those were the two things that popped into my head off the bat. So I don't think you have to worry personally, but I don't know if you want to add something, Christian. I saw that you were like nodding your head, and that just means I'm saying a good job, right?
I was agreeing. No, I think you put it very well, Megan. Thanks. And your perspective is much better than mine on that. So that strikes me as being a very fair summary.
Okay, well, I see that's all the questions. We're also just over time now anyway. So I want to thank, first off, thank you, Megan. Thank you, Christian, for jumping on today and sharing, your experiences and your insight into the castle. As well too, thank you everybody who joined us today, and we had some really great questions. I really hope you enjoyed the presentation. As always, if you want to connect with us, you can always email us at castle@queensu.ca. You could visit our website, which is the second one there, or you can check us out on Instagram at Queen's BISC. If you look in the chat right now, you'll also see my email. If you'd like to set up a Zoom chat and talk to me one-on-one, if you have a big list of questions or you want to find out more about ELOs, really anything actually, please feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to chat with you. On that note, thank you very much. All right, perfect. We got some positive feedback in the chat there, so thank you. We really do appreciate that. On that note, I'm going to wish you all a really good Saturday. Enjoy the weekend, and thank you all so much again for attending.